So your organization's having a bunch of problems and you just don't know what to do. It's a crisis. They're arguing. They can't get along. Things are being said that don't make sense. Well, I've got a solution from you. We're going to hear from a communications expert. Yes, crisis communications strategy. You all need that right down to your PTO and your church. You don't want to miss this segment. I'm Shelia Smoot. The Shelia Smoot Show starts right now. Welcome into the Shelia Smoot Show. I'm Shelia Smoot. It's good to have you along. As every week we do a topic that might catch you a little off guard, but will help you in the bitter end to be a better you, a better business, or just better at life. And today we have someone that we're going to talk to who is an expert in communications. I know I'm talking to you. I know I'm an excellent communicator. But there's more to it, believe it or not, in your small business, in your big business, in your community. Well, what about yourself? I'd like to welcome to the show Petula Burks, and she's with Jane Hampton Strategies, the CEO and founder, and she is the woman that's the strategy person when it comes to all things about making sure you're, communicating the right message. Petula, welcome into our show. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Sheila. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, great to be with you, and I thank you for joining us out of Richmond, Virginia, or Tampa, Florida, or Atlanta, or Georgia, wherever you are, because you travel more than the average person. I mean, you're on everybody's list to come and help out, right?
Yeah, I'm actually right now in Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
And it's very interesting because we were just shooting a podcast for a football team. So communications is literally every part of my life.
Every part of it, and you do well at it, and you've been in all facets of it. The communication, again, is more than information. I think people get confused when they're in small business about how to communicate, when they are doing things, even at their church or even in their community as a neighborhood president or somebody with the PTA. The communication gets to a point where people start tugging at each other, and these are volunteer jobs normally. But how do you help these organizations? What's the first step in your mind to being an excellent communicator, particularly with groups and businesses and even at work?
Well, I think the first thing I tell people all the time is you have to meet people exactly where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand what their needs are. So you cannot talk at people. And, I have worked for organizations where we go in and we tell people who they are, what their needs are. And instinctively, as leaders, if you are a small business, if you are an organization, if you're an organizer, before you can help a person and before you can communicate with them, you have to get to know who they are. And the best way to do that is start by listening.
Okay.
And that's huge because when you're dealing with communities, large, small, in between, you've got to understand what the issues are, and then you work together to create a solution, and then the communication begins, right? And so it starts with listening.
That's good. You are in a lot of organizations. I'm sure you've been in so many over the last couple of decades or so. I know I have been in. I'm currently in organizations, several different ones, whether it's my sorority, shout out to Alpha Kappa Alpha, and your sorority. Go ahead. You can shout it out. Go. I'll let you do it.
Thank you so much, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
The organizations, and you deal with so many different personalities. Certainly been on many boards as you have, Petula, and also just trying. And most of it, is volunteer. And there you have this breakdown of, well, why are we really here? And there you have these arguments, and then you have this miscommunication. What is your advice to building that listening ear in an organization, be it large or small?
Well, I think first of all, you have to know what your why is. So what is the purpose? A lot of times people come together in these organizations, and it's just they want to talk at each other and they want to one up each other, and so you end up getting nothing done, and it just ends up in people arguing with each other. So it's very important to set out your purpose so that everybody understands why we're in this room together and what we're working towards. And when you can communicate your purpose, then it keeps people aligned. And then the other thing is when people understand the purpose, if they're not aligned with that purpose, a lot of times they remove themselves from the situation. So then you have people who are aligned in purpose, and understand, okay, this is the goal, and then how do we get there? And so then you're allowing yourself and your organization to then say, okay, what do we want people to know? How do we want them to know it? And what tools do we need to use for them to get the information? And that streamlines so many things, because at the end of the day, communication is not just pushing information. You're building community, one, within your organization so that you can then build community outside of your organization. And the worst thing for an organization, whether it's a business or it is a volunteer organization, is for there to be so much confusion internally that the public or the community sees that and then they want no part of it. So then you've just lost, twofold. You've lost people that you could bring into the organization to help. And then it's like your reputation also suffers when people find out that you all are not aligned.
Right, right. And so in regard to that, when you're not aligned, people get out and they start doing all these things, and they throw events, they throw parties, they throw chat and chew or conversation over coffee, but still there's an element of it lost. Based on what you just said, they're still not really hitting the high points. And that is, what is our goal here? What is our mission? Why are we doing this, and what are we supposed, and what's the end game, and what's the result? What's the ROI, return on investment? So creating experiences, not just events, to help communities see themselves celebrate their greatness. Talk to me a little bit about what that means.
So I'll give you an example. I worked for a city many moons ago, and they had a bad reputation. And it really wasn't their doing. There was a lot of crime, but because of where that city was located, there was a lot of pass-throughs. And so it got named, murder capital of such place. And so what we did as a city, we worked together to, one, work with our residents to say, first of all, when you hear these things about yourselves, you should not be co-signing on them. And let me tell you why. Because here are all of the great things that this city is doing, and that we want you to be involved in that, so that when you see that story, you can rebut it. And the city no longer has to. And when I tell you the pride of the city and the people in that city, like, we were pushing stuff out. So, you had 144 events. And you never had an instance of, any type of crime, any type of fight, whatever. It was peaceful. And so what you learn is, if people can participate in an event and they understand that when they leave that event, that they're leaving there with something, whether it's how they felt when they came in or how they felt when they left, it is that pride in that place, right? And so one of the things that we try to do, and I've tried to do over my career, is when we create an event, you create a space where people see themselves in the event. And so we did an event for one city, and when folks walked in, they saw themselves in pictures, right? So whether it was from 1950 or present day with the parks director, and we got calls about that, and they were like, can we get that? That was my grandmother in that picture, and we're having a birthday party for her. But what people saw was, one, we see you, and then they saw themselves, and so they're included in. And all parts of all of your events have to include the people you are serving. And if they don't see themselves, then they can't then say, I love the city. They see me. And so at the end of the day, what you really want is being able to build pride for people to say, I like this. Because it's kind of the thing, people say this all the time, whether it's your organization or your community or whatnot. It's like, when you talk about my mom, I get mad, but I can talk about my mom because she's my mom. But at the end of the day, the most that I'm going to talk about my mom is she's the best person in the entire world, right?
Right. You're
That's
not
how
going to
I
talk
want
about the
people.
bad stuff.
You're not going to talk about the bad stuff. And you've got to get organizations in that space. If something is happening internally, you deal with it internally. But then you also build in things internally in your organization that communicate the pride, that show people we see you. So whether it's creating a day where you celebrate your employees, if it's a day where you celebrate just, it's ice cream day, you name it, make up some things to celebrate, because then they're like, I work for the best organization. Guess what they become? Your brand ambassadors. And it's an easy win for you, because then when someone's saying something negative, oh no, I work for them. And let me tell you what they do. And let me tell you, you need that. So you've got to convert folks, right? And you need to convert your loudest naysayer into your loudest champion. And that work goes a long, long way, Sheila.
It does. And that's excellent advice. Even in your household, if you're having an argument right now, that's good advice. That's good advice. Welcome into the Shelia Smoot Show. I'm Shelia Smoot. Good to have you along. My guest, Petula Burks with J. Hampton Strategy. She's the CEO and founder of this experience communications company where you communicate in so many different situations, crisis situations, situation where you think it's going good, and then you look up and it's like, oh, it's not so good. Talk to us about the intentional, inclusive, and building on that listening component again, because how do you know when it's tanking, and how do you start to save it without panicking? Because that's your portion of it. Because the average person is like, oh my God, the place is burning down. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Oh my God, we're not there yet. What's the first thing that somebody, whether they're with an association, with a small business, big business, when they feel like things are spiraling down, what is your advice to say, okay, let's stabilize right now? Yeah, it looks like that, but we don't need you to know that.
Right. So the first thing usually is I tell people to take a breath,
Breathe.
because it's never as bad as we think it is.
Right.
And if you operate from panic, then people will feel and see that panic. And now you've created a larger problem, because oftentimes, as you said, most people on the outside don't know what's actually going on. And so if you take a moment to breathe, you pull together the stakeholders internally that you need to talk to and say, okay, what's going on? Because maybe it's not the whole system that's failing. It's one piece in that system that's failing. And we need to fix that, and we need to fix that immediately, whether we need to take it out or we need to shore it up. But we need to fix it so then the problem does not get larger. Because when it gets larger, then it's like, oh, holy crap, what are we going to do? And we're waving our hands. You cannot panic in these. I can't stress enough. You cannot panic. The other thing is, internally, there has to be really honest communication. So if a mistake was made that's causing some issue, you've got to be able to say, hey, I made it. But leadership has to also say, we support you, because it's a mistake that because you're human, not because you were lazy or all the things that people tend to lean in when something happens. Catastrophes happen because once people don't feel supported, they're not going to speak up and say, hey, I made a mistake, or maybe something right here, because people don't want to be blamed in situations. Instead, you've got to have leaders that say, we support our team, and whatever we need to do to correct this specific issue, we're going to do that. Because if we don't, then we exasperate a problem that we don't need to exasperate.
Hello, Money Mavericks. I am Angela Webb Weinberg, your Jefferson County Treasurer for the Birmingham Division. We are working with getting financially fit, and let's start with our new tip of the week. Remember, residents, about property tax deadlines and possible exemptions for your seniors and your veterans. Remember home and auto insurance policies for coverage changes before renewal season. Let's keep our credit card balances under those 30% of your limit. If possible, use debit or cash for discretionary spending to stay on track. Visit annualcreditreport.com. It's free through the end of the year. Look for any errors and disputes on any inaccuracies early. Encourage community banking relationships with a lot of our banks. Many of them offer financial wellness promotions, credit counseling, or new savings incentives. Also, let's create a money chart challenge with your family. Discuss savings versus spending and teach your children about your needs versus wants. View your retirement contributions and flex spending accounts before year end. Plan charitable giving and tax-deductible donations early. I'm Angela Webb Weinberg, your Jefferson County Treasurer, Birmingham Division, getting you financially fit.
For those folks who are the flamethrowers in the room, the naysayers in the room, the people who come in the room and say, this will never work. The ones that really basically start the fire with these organizations and say, hey, what is your advice to those folks who are leading those groups and to making sure that fire, that flamethrower, that naysayer, that doubter gets doused, gets, put back into the space of why are we here?
So I think one, you have to keep the naysayer close, right? Because those are the people, and you need them. Let's just be honest. You always have to have an antagonist because they're the ones who are also going to point out sort of the problem, right? And so you want to keep them in the room because you've got 20 of them on the outside. So at the end of the day, if you can get that naysayer to see, oh gosh, this is great. Oh my God, I see what you're trying to do. And you have to understand where they're coming from, right? So a lot of times we want to throw the naysayer out with the bathwater. We shouldn't do that. You want to find out from them, well, what's the issue? Because they're the other part of the community or the other part of the organization that may not say anything, but they're whispering. And so when the whisper campaign gets louder and they know that, oh, well, the solution is X, that naysayer can go out and say, oh, no, y'all can quiet that down. So keep your naysayers close and help them see what the purpose is, but involve them in the process as well. Because if they're involved, then they can't go and knock their own work.
Right. Why is it important for people to have folks like you on their teams or on a project? Or why is it important to have somebody that's in crisis communications or in communications in general? What is that? Because I've seen more and more organizations reach out to folks like yourselves and say, hey, we just need a little help here.
Well, I think one, communicators have to communicate in different ways. And the first thing is we have to pay attention before we even speak. And so I tell people all the time, in your organizations, your communicators should be at every table. And that means a lot of meetings. And it means a lot of meetings where we don't say anything, but we pay attention to what is not being said. We pay attention to body language. And then we go back and we analyze what just happened. And then we can talk to leaders about, you need to talk about X in a different way because I saw 30 people stiffen when you said it. So there's something in that messaging that's not good, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes leaders aren't reading the room in that way because they just want to get it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes in getting it out, you offend half of your audience, right? You offend
That
half of
includes
your
your
staff.
churchgoers.
And so you got to really think through all the things. And communicators are very good at making sure, one, you're not offending people. Two, you read the room and understand how to pivot. Because a lot of times, if you see one frown, you've got 20 others somewhere else. And so you want to, and check yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, what you want is people to buy in. They may not truly believe all of it. That's okay. You'll get them there, but you want them to buy into what you're saying and how you're leading. And so communicators are important in that way. And then the other thing, especially for crisis, is oftentimes you've got your silos within your organizations, right? So they're only talking within their silos. Your communicator is the bridge in all of that. And so I say communicators are your best support team that you will ever get, because we're going to take all of that information that you all aren't sharing with each other and share it, and then, massage it a little bit, because whatever then needs to go out to the public, we've created that message and narrative for you that is palatable for all people. And so we're thinking about, do we need to get it translated? Do we need to have X? Does it need to be, because a lot of times people we just need to get it out. But what happens if within your organization or within your community, you have people who do not speak English, or you have people who are blind? So we think through all of those other things for you too. And the other thing with crisis communication is most times we will have seen something before, even if you haven't. So we may have an old crisis communication plan that we can then come in and adapt to your situation, but you don't have to start from scratch with us because we've seen it before. And so we can adapt for you and help lead you through that crisis.
To the people who lead smaller organizations, such as their PTA, their PTO, and churches, church folk, you know who you are. You will run somebody out of a sanctuary and pray for them at the same time. And people, I mean, I have seen, and I'm like, oh no, I don't want to go in there. It's a little testy in that church. How do they need to adapt? Because, you know, people are territorial about their organizations.
Right. I think one, we have to learn that, you know, everybody has a good idea, and that we can learn from anybody. And, you know, I grew up in the Black Baptist church, you know, in my hometown of Athens, Georgia. So I've seen it all.
Right.
And, you know, I've seen it where people work around people, people exclude people. But at the end of the day, especially in the church, when it's, you know, all who will let them come, when they come, you have to know what you want to do with them. And so I think in small organizations, whether it be PTA or our churches or our sewing circles, right? What are people's interests? And so allow them to get into those groups that are interested, that they are interested in, as opposed to pushing them out. Because once you push them out, the narrative is they don't want people like me. Well, what does that mean? And so you can't have that because we want to be more inclusive than we are exclusive. And so it is how you treat people in the moment, how you make sure that, hey, what is your talent? Oh, well, did you know we have this over here? And that might be, you know, aligned with what you want to do, because then when you come back into the larger group, now they feel a part of, not excluded. And so the narrative is, oh my God, that church or that organization or that sewing circle or that PTA, they are amazing. You would want to send your kids to that school because the PTA is so great. Because I might be different than you, but differences are welcomed. And so how we approach people and how we deal with people is also communication. And if we deal with them in a negative frame of reference, that frame of reference is what they take back out as the narrative into the community. And so we have to think about how people enter into our presence and how they exit.
Wow, that is really good information for groups of any caliber, big, large, small. And again, you know, some of these folks are very, very turf oriented. They're very territorial about this is me. And I've noticed over the years, many of these groups, that some of it is honestly, that's the only thing that has ever made these folks relevant. And if that's what they need, I tend to back out. But you're saying, hey, meet people where they are and hope that they can adapt. Any last parting words from our expert in the communications realm about doing and making sure that you communicate effectively so that your group doesn't fail or falter?
It's all about, I'm going to always start and end with listen, listen, listen. You've got to know what's your why, what is your purpose, and then understanding how to pivot and how to become resilient in these spaces. None of this is for the faint of heart. And so at the end of the day, if we aren't listening and then acting upon what we've heard, and we're only doing what we want to do, those organizations will always have a problem. And I don't want to say it, but they will fail, because at the end of the day, organizations are not focused on one person, they're focused on the masses. And so you've got to get in tune with the masses. And the only way you can do that is start by listening and always know your why. Those two things together, you can create an organization that people will respect and want to be a part of, because your communication comes after you do those two things.
Right. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, have you come in to speak to their group and their organization, and how do they get in touch with you to bring you in to actually train them and speak to their organization and, for lack of a better word, get them back on track?
Well, I think the easiest way, honestly, you can call me 954-826-4995. That's also a number where you can text me directly. I answer every message that anyone sends to me. I'm also on Instagram at the Only J Hampton. I'm also on Facebook at J Hampton Strategies. But I will tell you, if you call or text me, I'll either answer the phone right then, or I'll text you and call you right back.
All right. We really enjoyed your conversation. J Hampton Strategies President, CEO, and founder, all about your crisis communications and your groups, your small groups, your large groups, and just in general. Thank you so much. You're going to be hearing more from Ms. Burks during the rest of the year on getting us back on track. And I know I like people, Petula. I genuinely start out really, really liking you. But like they say in don't make me mad. Don't make me mad. Okay.
We're going to get it so that people start with listening and knowing their why, Sheila, so you can continue to like them throughout.
Rocket, my photographer, don't make me mad. Yeah. I've worked with this gentleman for 20 years. I've seen him mad, and you don't want to make the photographer mad. Not ever. Petula, thank you so much. It's been a joy talking to you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Not ever.
That was J Hampton Strategies joining us about how to be an effective communicator in your group, in your organization, or just being you. And just a wealth of information. I tell you, some of you in these groups and some of you on your way trekking out to your groups and being the lead or being behind the scenes. First thing I like to do, always keep it classy and keep it cordial, mostly keep it professional. And if you get mad, just go outside and breathe. I'm consumer advocate Shelia Smoot. With fuel prices fluctuating, what happens if you're stuck with a gas guzzler? We all know the best way to save gas is to have a more fuel-efficient car. But if you're stuck with a gas guzzler, are you doomed to endless trips to the pump? Not necessarily, says Consumer Reports. They found the #1 way to save on fuel is just slow down. You should also drive consistently. Speeding up and braking frequently cut the fuel efficiency of a typical Toyota Camry by several miles per gallon. Next, remove anything on the roof. Items like bike racks can reduce a car's efficiency by a whopping 15 miles per gallon. One final tip, take a moment to warm up your engine. Consumer Reports says that simple step can help your car consume less fuel. I'm Shelia Smoot. Remember, don't be a sucker, be a consumer. I'm Shelia Smoot. Thank you for joining the Shelia Smoot Show. And remember, don't be a sucker, be a consumer. I'm going to add one more to this one this week. Don't get mad. Don't get even, get smart. Again, thank you for joining me. We'll see you next week.